Buddy, my name is Eric Fingerhut. I'm the president and CEO of the Jewish Federations of North America. It's my great privilege to welcome you to this 13th annual Jewish Disability Advocacy Day. I'm actually calling in today, zooming in today from Eretz Yisrael, from Israel, but I could not possibly imagine missing Jewish Disability Advocacy Day. I want to first acknowledge with gratitude our lead co-sponsors, the Religious Action Center of Reform Judaism, and the Network of Jewish Human Services Agencies, both of whom have shown such deep, caring, and consistent advocacy for these issues over the years, together with 80 other sponsoring organizations. Thank you all for your leadership and for your support. I want to also acknowledge, make a personal acknowledgement of a colleague, of our dear colleague, Aaron Kaufman, who is our lead disability advocate at the Jewish Federations of North America and has been involved in planning Jewish Disability Advocacy Day for many years, and congratulate him on his election to the Maryland House of Delegates. We are so proud that Delegate Kaufman will be sharing his passion, his expertise, his knowledge with the entire state and also with the entire country through his work in the Maryland House of Delegates. Kol hakavod, Aaron, we look forward to your leadership there. We also, of course, want to acknowledge with condolences and deep sorrow the passing of your beloved brother, Jay Kaufman, and wish that you and your family be comforted at this time. You be comforted among all the mourners of Zion and the world. I also want to thank my colleagues who worked so hard to put this together, Alana Breitman, Darcy Hirsch, and so many others. And with that, I want to thank everyone who's participating, who helped develop the advocacy agenda, and certainly to all the members of Congress and the administration who are working hand in glove with our organizations and with so many others to advance the cause of disability rights. And with that, I want to turn the program to Michelle Hirsch. Michelle is a terrific lay leader in the Cleveland Jewish community with the Jewish Community Federation of Cleveland. She's also on our National Women's Philanthropy Board and the board of the Jewish Federations of North America, and is the co-chair of the Disabilities Committee of our Domestic Policy and Government Affairs Committee. Michelle, over to you.
Thank you, Eric. And I think it speaks volumes that Eric is here and took his time from being in Israel with his busy schedule. It starts at the top, and knowing that he is here and making JDAD a priority, we feel that. So thank you, Eric. As Eric mentioned, my name is Michelle Hirsch. I use the she, her pronouns. I'm in my early 40s. I'm white. I have brown long hair, brown eyes, and I'm currently sitting in my home office in Cleveland, Ohio. I serve on the board of the Jewish Federations of North America, as Eric said, as well as the Cleveland Federation and the Cleveland Jewish Family Services Board. And along with Emily Grabowski, my co-chair, we together chair the Disability Committee for the Jewish Federations of North America. And I'm honored to open our program for you today. My late Uncle Kenny, of blessed memory, lived his life with a developmental disability. In the 1980s and 90s, I grew up in a world very different than today. No one talked about his disability, or frankly, anyone with a disability. It was polite to ignore. It was polite to not ask questions. It was polite to turn a blind eye and avoid. It was not until later in his life that society started to evolve and conversations around inclusion became more of the cultural norm, both within my family and within our community. Volunteering my time with the Jewish Federation's North America's Disability Committee for the past several years is my way of helping to make sure that all the Uncle Kennys of the world have a voice, treating everyone fairly and with the dignity that they deserve. While we've come a long way, we still have so much work to do. Instead of ignoring, we must advocate. Instead of accepting inequalities, we must create opportunities. Instead of hiding, we must demand visibility. And that's exactly what we're going to do today. To almost 600 of you who are Zooming in from all over the country, thank you. Thank you for joining in and for being part of our collective change. Together, we can make a difference. And that's what Jewish Disability Advocacy Day is all about. As part of our advocacy today, we are thrilled to share with you that just this morning, we sent the first ever national Jewish letter urging Congress to prioritize disability policy signed by 137 national and local Jewish organizations from across the country. And our collective advocacy does not stop there. Later on in the program, we will share an action alert in the chat so that you too can take action today. In fact, this year we have so much to celebrate. Just this past December, through our collective advocacy, we secured 2 major legislative victories that were key priorities at Jewish disability advocacy for many years. Congress passed the Able Age Adjustment Act that will allow Americans disabled between age 26 and 46, 6 million more individuals, access to tax-free savings accounts to help pay for their disability-related expenses. And Congress passed a 4-year extension for Money Follows the Person, a vital program that has helped more than 107,000 low-income people with disabilities and older adults move back home to live in their own communities. These tremendous achievements demonstrate the strength of our voices when we raise them together and the value of our persistence. Despite the progress we have made towards inclusion and these achievements, and in the 33 years since enacting the Americans with Disability Act, too many people live with disabilities still experience tremendous challenges in their daily lives. So today, we are going to learn about the work that remains to be done and an amazing lineup of speakers. Our program will feature 2 panels. During the first panel, Melissa Weiss, managing editor of the Jewish Insider, will interview Representative Brian Fitzpatrick of the 1st Congressional District in Pennsylvania. He serves as the new Republican co-chair of the House Bipartisan Disability Caucus and received our Legislator of the Year award last year at Jewish Disability Advocacy Day. The second panel will feature 3 remarkable individuals who are living with a disability and advocating for others, engaged in conversation with Jewish Federation's own Rabbi Isaiah Rothstein. And our program will conclude with a call to action from Yolanda Savage-Narva, Assistant Vice President of Racial Equality, Diversity, and Inclusion for the Union for Reform Judaism. We also will view some special video greetings during the program from Representative Debbie Dingle of Michigan's 6th District, a longtime champion of our priorities, and a new Democratic co-chair of the House Bipartisan Disability Caucus, and Aaron Kaufman, our very own delegate to the Maryland General Assembly. It's also, Facebook tells me, Aaron's birthday today. So this could be the biggest birthday party you've ever seen, Aaron, and we are sending all our love to you on this special day. So let's get this party started, shall we? To start our program, we begin with the Devar Torah from Rabbi Derby Lee, who leads Congregation Kerem Shalom in Concord, Massachusetts, and is one of only a handful of profoundly deaf rabbis in the world today. Rabbi Lee has written and taught extensively on deafness and Judaism, toured with the National Theater of the Deaf, appeared on stage with rock and roll bands, Jane's Addiction, and Twisted Sister. He is committed to creating inclusive and caring communities. Finally, this outstanding event would not have been made possible without our partners throughout North America. My disability co-chair, Emily Grabelski, and the support of the Jewish Federations of North America staff members, Darcy Hirsch.
I sent you an email.
Elizabeth Cullen and
Shows that you can
Lily
access
Hayden
1099 Gs.
of the REC. We also want to make sure everybody hits their mute button. And to all of you who have joined us today and will continue to advocate for change, thank you for your advocacy. Thank you for showing up. Thank you for continuing to do everything you will do after today. Without further ado, I turn the program over to Rabbi Derby Lee.
Thank you so much for the warm and welcome and introduction. So, shalom, everyone. I am Rabbi Derby Lee, and I'm presenting as a white male with a black kippah, a short beard, hearing aid, and rimless glasses in my office in Kerem Shalom in Massachusetts. I use he, him pronouns, and I'm speaking and signing in English while our ASL interpreter interprets into grammatically accurate ASL. I want to thank the Jewish Federation of North America, the Religious Action Center, and the Network for Jewish Human Services Agencies for the honor and the invitation to come and speak with you today. Can everyone understand me so far? Give me a thumbs up if you can, or yes. Great, thank you. So last week, we read the Torah portion, Yitro, from the book of Exodus. Yitro contains within it one of the most famous narratives in the entire Torah, the story of revelation on Mount Sinai. The Torah tells us that Moses was on top of the mountain while all of the biblical Israelites were gathered at the base. It is a dramatic and powerful story. And there is a wonderful midrash, a rabbinic sacred writing, that says that the soul of every single member of the Jewish community was there, including all future generations. Everyone, you, me, deaf people, people with disabilities, the midrash says that every single one of us was there. It's a beautiful teaching and a beautiful statement of being together in community. Judaism is complex, however, because we have another midrash that says, well, actually, no one was deaf there. No one with a mobility challenge was there. No one was blind there. No one with an intellectual disability was there, and so on. Ouch. That one's painful. It had taken me years to figure out how these two seemingly contradictory teachings can coexist in our tradition. Finally, I have come to understand that the second midrash is saying ke'ilu, as if. It is as if our disabilities weren't there, because of course we were all there in the fullness of ourselves, but it is as if our disabilities weren't there because there were no barriers to our full participation in the communal experience in that moment. Each one of us, every single one of us, was able in that moment to have a full, unrestricted, unencumbered access to what was a communal experience. And that's all we want. That is all people with disabilities want. We just want to be part of it. We've come a long way, but the truth is, people with disabilities are still looked down upon. We are still seen as less than. And we still don't have full access to all of the communal experiences that our society has to offer. And the disability community is strong and empowered, but we can't do it alone. So we need committed allies who will continue to work alongside with us and advocate with us to help create a society and a world that truly reflects our values. And that's what today is about. We're all here together, expressing our commitment to work together to create a society where all of us can be present in the fullness of our divinely created selves to receive Torah or whatever experience we are seeking to have, along with the community, each of us according to our own means and abilities. And who knows, if you're open to it, you might even learn something from the disability community. Thank you for your time.
Hi, everyone. It's Congresswoman Debbie Dingle from Michigan's 6th District. I'm honored to be joining you today, albeit virtually. I wish I could be there in person for Jewish Disability Advocacy Day. And most importantly, for this conversation that we have to have about removing barriers to inclusion for people with disabilities and how we're working in Congress to promote equity and address the many challenges faced by the disability community. Thank you to the Jewish Federations of North America, the Religious Action Center of Reform Judaism, and the Network of Jewish Human Service Agencies for hosting Jewish Disability Advocacy Day, and for all your efforts to promote inclusion and accessibility and to empower people with disabilities to lead lives of greater independence and economic stability. I am proud to co-chair the Bipartisan Disabilities Caucus with my good friend, Representative Brian Fitzpatrick, where we will be working not only to make our country fairer and more accessible, but to elevate the voices and perspectives of folks with disabilities in these conversations to broaden our collective understanding of their experiences. One of my biggest priorities is to expand home and community-based services for older adults and people with disabilities. A few weeks ago, I reintroduced my Better Care, Better Jobs Act with Senator Bob Casey to enhance Medicaid funding for home care, helping many of the over 650,000 people on waiting lists finally receive the care they need in the setting of their choice, allowing them to remain active in their communities and live independently. This legislation would also strengthen the caregiving workforce, improve the quality of life for families, and boost the economy by creating good paying jobs to make it possible for families and workers alike to thrive economically. I will not give this fight up until no one is waiting to get the care that they deserve, and that no care worker is living below the poverty line to provide this care. Right now, too many caregivers are working 2 or 3 jobs and still living below the poverty line. I'm thankful to have all of you as partners in this important work, and we will not give up until we get the job done.
Thank you very much, Congresswoman. My name is Melissa Weiss. I'm the managing editor of Jewish Insider. I'm a woman in her mid-30s with brown hair. Good morning to those of you on the West Coast. Good afternoon to those of you on the East Coast. And to any of you who are joining me from Jerusalem or Tel Aviv, good evening. I'm very honored to be joined here today by Congressman Brian Fitzpatrick. We have him here.
I'm here.
Ah, there you are. All right. Well, welcome, Congressman. How are you?
Doing great. How are you?
I'm good. Thank you so much for joining us today. We jump right into it. So you have sponsored or co-sponsored a lot of legislation that's relevant to our conversation today. I would love to know what drives you to focus on disability awareness.
Yeah, well, thanks for having me. I was asked to replace the late Representative Don Young and to join my dear friend who you just heard from, Debbie Dingle. Debbie and I are both active in the Problem Solvers Caucus. It's a bipartisan group here in Washington who focus on two-party solutions, who understand that any serious legislative attempt has to be bipartisan, bicameral nature. That's the only way we can get things done, particularly in a divided Congress. And Debbie's a dear friend of mine as well. My connection to the disabilities community, my only living brother is disabled, both physically and mentally. And, in all likelihood, I'm going to be his primary caretaker. I'm thankful to have both of my parents still living. They're both in their late 80s. But it's something that, when you live with day in and day out and you understand the challenges that people face going through that, how can it not become a passion of yours, particularly when it's loved ones that are struggling on all hosts of fronts. And you see, when you live with it every day, the gaps in the system that exists, and they exist throughout the system. They exist in the educational system, in the workforce, in the healthcare system, you name it. There's so much progress that we can make on all fronts to make sure that people that are struggling with a disability, whether they be born with it or whether they acquire it throughout their life, that they're given an equal shot and that they're lifted up and given equal opportunities.
Great. Thank you so much for sharing that. Do you have a specific area of disability policy that is particularly important or meaningful to you?
Yeah, I mean, psychological, emotional disabilities. I'm the co-chair of another task force with Andy Custer, David Trone. It's the mental health task force, and I believe it to be the biggest crisis in America, both substance use disorder and mental health. And a lot of people that are struggling with all forms of disabilities will also have concurrent mental health challenges and sometimes substance use challenges as well, depending on how they are coping. So that's going to be the biggest area of my focus. I'm also looking forward to working with all of you who run the gamut on all sorts of exposure to different types of disabilities, both physical and behavioral and emotional, to share with us, to share with me and with Debbie your stories about what your experiences have been, what you've encountered, where the gaps are. We have I've been connected with a very large community in my own district of families living with autism. And they've shared with me a whole host of areas where their children or their loved ones are falling through the cracks, particularly when they graduate from high school and they don't have that same support structure there for them anymore. Really, our state and federal government has failed these people, because when they're coming into our office asking us to introduce legislation or advocate to an executive agency on their behalf, it's because the system isn't working for them. And that's something that we need to take a look at across the board.
Absolutely. Now, you've been in Congress for a few years now, more than a few years. What policies are you most proud of related to your disability work in Congress?
It would probably be with regard to the ALS community. So I became very good friends with a young military veteran by the name of Matt Belina. He lives in my district, struggling with ALS, which is a very, very tough disease, as you all know. And we were able to advance some legislation that would allow people struggling with a whole host of debilitating diseases like that to have access to medications that are partially but not fully all the way through the FDA protocol, provided that they are provided informed consent. They are given all the information that they need, but it gives them access and therefore gives them hope. And I think that's the most important thing that we can offer people in the disabilities community is hope. Yes, we owe them equal opportunity for sure. We have to prevent all the pitfalls and the gaps that so many of our friends and loved ones that are part of the disability community fall into, but we also need to give them hope. We need to give them a light at the end of the tunnel, because no matter what form of disability people are living with, it's hard. It's hard to live life as a healthy adult that's not struggling with disabilities. It's even harder for people who are, because they have the additional challenges of the simple tasks that so many of us take for granted are a major workload for them. And it's not only a physical workload, it takes a psychological and emotional toll on them as well. I'm sure it's difficult for their family members. I'm sure there's guilt associated with that when people aren't able to care for themselves, that they feel, many of them feel guilt-ridden about the people that love them, that are doing so because they love their family members and their friends and whoever they're taking care of. But that's an additional toll on any disabled person, for sure. So I think that, you know, when we're looking at legislation to close the gaps, we have to look at this from a 360-degree paradigm and also look at the hope piece of this. Every single one of us, disabled or not, wants to know that things are going to be better than they are today, that things are going to be better tomorrow than they are today. We need that for psychological and emotional health. And certainly that's even more important for those in our disabled community.
Absolutely. I love that you talk about hope, because that's important. And I guess what inspires you to take such a strong leadership role on innovative policies to empower people with disabilities to thrive?
I think it's just a matter, like all of us here, just caring about other human beings and taking the view that if we're a leader, no matter what we're a leader in life, not just elected officials, whether you're the leader of a family as a parent, whether you're leading an organization like you all are doing, our job is to help people that can't help themselves. That's our highest calling in life. And you all have dedicated your lives to helping people who have a hard time helping themselves. And it's a very noble and honorable way to live one's life. And that's really where it comes from. And I'm sure I'm preaching to the choir here, because I'm sure that's why you are all doing what you're doing.
Now, we know that Washington is not a place where everyone gets along all the time. Who are some of the other members of Congress who you have been able to really work with on disability policy in your time in Washington?
Yeah, well, certainly Debbie Dingle, she's at the top of the list. I'm thrilled to be co-leading this group with her. And really, you know, the people that are involved in our bipartisan group, because they're the ones that believe and understand the importance of collaboration and cooperation and consensus building. It's important to solve any problem, whether that's in our personal relationships, in marriage, or in team building, or in leading anything. You have to always be comfortable with other people identifying your blind spots, because we're all a product of our upbringing. Every single one of us. We're a product of the family we grew up in, where we grew up, where we went to school, pain we may have experienced in a certain part of our life that other people haven't. It all affects our paradigm and how we approach problems, but we're all a product of that. And every single one of us have our blind spots. And the people in our bipartisan group, Debbie at the top of that list, by the way, understand that we want to take the same approach to legislative policymaking that we take towards our personal relationships. Better to get 80% of something than 100% of nothing. Come to the center and build consensus, and view diversity of thought as a strength to be harnessed and not a weakness to be criticized, because the best legislative products are a result of the best and brightest ideas being brought to the table. And it's also important for sustainability, because if we want these bills, like, for example, all the amazing landmark disabilities pieces of legislation that have been passed throughout the past decades, if we want them to be sustainable over the long term, they have to be a product of bipartisanship and two-party solutions. Otherwise, they're just going to get uprooted every time the pendulum swings back and forth, as it always has and always will in government. So that's why we're a big believer in what we do. And it's no more important in any other legislative realm than it is the disabilities realm, because these are people that are owed the least we can do in DC and in our state capitals across America is be there for our people that are struggling with disabilities. Many of us don't live with the same struggles they do. The least we can do is legislate in an effective manner that can at least make their life a little bit easier, or at least relieve a little bit of their stress or the stress of their family members. That's the least we can do.
Thank you so much, Congressman. I think we've got time for one more question. So looking ahead, what are some of your goals you'd like to accomplish in this area in the 118th Congress?
I think the most important thing, we talk about stigma a lot. We could talk about individual legislative initiatives and pieces of legislation, and I'll be co-sponsors on every single one of them, as I always have. And I'm going to take it upon myself to make sure that we get as many co-sponsors as possible. But I think the most important thing we need to do is eliminate stigma in the disability community. And stigma is just a very polite way of saying prejudice and discrimination. Any blocks that those in our disability community are encountering, we have to focus on taking them down. But the most important thing we can do in order to accomplish that is to make sure that we have equity and equality across the board in all aspects of life. There's nothing that a healthy person should be able to do that someone struggling with a disability should not be able to do. And if they can't do it, then we have to identify why that's the case and figure out how to fix that. Now, of course, we're never going to get 100% of our goal, but we ought to aspire for it and try to get there. And like I said, if we can provide for, no matter what type of disability somebody's dealing with, be mindful of their emotional health and giving them hope. That's the greatest gift we can give to them. It's the greatest gift. It's the greatest gift we can give to ourselves as well. And certainly they're no exception. So I think the bottom line is everything we do, everything we say, everything we legislate, try to lift these people up because they're dealing with very, very tough circumstances, some tougher than others. And that's the least we can do, is to give them hope and lift them up. And certainly, you know, when we have flying days here in our nation's capital, where people come in from all different types of organizations and groups dealing with different types of disabilities, and making them feel part of the process, bringing them on the House floor, just giving them hope, making them feel part of the legislative process, making them aware that they're not just helping themselves by getting involved and engaging, but they're helping so many other people that they don't know, whose names they will never know who they are. But I just think the psychological aspect of the work we do for them is really, really important.
Congressman, thank you so much for joining us today and for all the work you do on these issues. We really appreciate it. I'll turn it now to Aaron Kaufman.
Hi, friends. Can you hear me? Can I get a thumbs up or something? I'm Aaron Kaufman. I'm Maryland State Delegate Aaron Kaufman. I'm currently on leave from my job as the Senior Manager of Legislative Senior Manager of Legislative Affairs. See, you're gone a little bit and you forget your title, at the Jewish Federations of North America. And I've had the honor of being part of the JFNA, or now Jewish Federations family, for 7 years. So I want to give a big virtual hug to my dear friends, Lily Heyman from the RAG, and Elizabeth Cullen and Darcy Hirsch from Jewish Federations, who've worked their tushies off to get this wonderful program together for you today. And I want to thank all 209 of you for joining us. I have the honor of talking for a minute about self-advocacy. My visual description is that I'm a person with cerebral palsy who uses a walker to get around. And I'm in my mid-30s and I have brown hair, and I'm wearing a sports coat and a vest and a Maryland House Delegates button on my jacket. Self-advocacy, colleagues, can be tiring, right? It's tiring every day to constantly educate people and talk to people, fight the stigma that Congressman Fitzpatrick was talking about. And there are days that you're just too tired, that you're tired and you do not want to advocate anymore. But we must fight our fatigue, our emotional and physical fatigue, and keep fighting, because together we can achieve great things. Whether it was our work for many years at JDAD, getting the Able Age Adjustment Act passed, or fighting cuts to Medicaid, or a bill that would have gutted the Americans with Disabilities Act, this event has led to success, and it will continue to lead to success. And one of the major reasons that it's been success is that self-advocates have been at the forefront of our advocacy efforts. I am a person with cerebral palsy, and I lead Jewish Federation's work on disability policy. And so many of you together have helped us achieve so many wonderful achievements over the past 13 years. And I just want to say that people often talk about people with disabilities or for people with disabilities. And what Jewish Federations and the RAC believes is what I believe with every fiber of my being. Nothing about us without us, the old disability rights maxim. The ADA would not have happened without people with disabilities climbing the steps of the Capitol to protest the fact that it hadn't passed. So I know we're tired. I know we're weary, but we deliver results. And that's exactly what you all are going to do today. And I want to thank Congressman Fitzpatrick for his moving words. He's such a blessing in Congress, and he demonstrates that that disability is still one of the areas of comity. Well, I would like to talk to you for longer, but I must head off to a meeting of the House Judiciary Committee. So I'm going to turn it over to my dear friend, Isaiah Rothstein, who is going to have a discussion today with some amazing self-advocates that will again highlight for you the power of self-advocacy and the impact that people with disabilities make on this world every day when people focus on our abilities, not our disabilities. Thank you.
Amen. Amen. Shalom, beautiful friends. My name is Isaiah Rothstein. I serve as rabbinic scholar and public affairs advisor at Jewish Federations of North America, where I have the honor of leading our JDAD initiative, which stands for Jewish Equity, Diversity, and Inclusion. And our mission is to create a culture of belonging for all Jews and our loved ones, while building bridges across socially and culturally diverse communities. As for my visual description, I use he, him pronouns. I'm in my mid-30s. I'm wearing a suit, glasses, a kippah that was made by Ethiopian Israelis, and I am a Black Jew with white skin. And I'm also smiling at each and every one of you. Thank you, Representative Fitzpatrick and Melissa, for sharing your time and your insights on what additional changes Congress might consider at the federal level to improve the lives of people with disabilities. It's important for people to hear just how vital our own individual and organizational advocacy can be in elevating these ideas and communicating to policymakers why these solutions are so critical for people living with significant challenges from a disability. And also just a sincere thank you to my friend and my teacher, Delegate Aaron Kaufman, for his inspiring words. And I hope you will all join me in saying and singing, "Happy birthday, dear Harriet. Happy birthday to you." We turn now to a few remarkable individuals who have graciously offered to share their own experiences living with a disability and how their experiences are motivating them and so many others to advocate for a better world for people with disabilities. I'm honored to introduce Kohenet, Dr. Harriet Wims, who is a Maryland licensed clinical psychologist, as well as a leader in her community in Baltimore, working to bring Jewish people of color together in a myriad of ways. She is currently the first Jew of Color Engagement Fellow at the Associated, Baltimore's Jewish Federation. And I'm also honored to be alongside Dr. Harriet in the Schusterman Fellowship, cohort number 7. In her own words, she is a proud Black, disabled Jew by choice, and is most proud of being a mother to her neurodiverse 18-year-old. Stefan Clank joins us from the Southern New Jersey. He is a multimedia journalist and photographer, a current fellow at the New Jersey Leadership and Education in Neurodevelopment and Related Disabilities, also known as NJ Lend, at Rutgers University, and a graduate of New Jersey Partners in Policymaking Programs. So glad you're here, Brian. And Brian Eisenberg joins us from New York, where he is a graduate student as the Albany Medical College studying medical ethics, and advocacy. Brian graduated from Jewish Federation's Changemakers this past summer, teaches music therapy to children, and is pursuing a master's degree in disability studies. And Brian, I'm glad we got a chance to sing together a little bit at the General Assembly. I'm just really so grateful to all three of you. I'm so honored that I get to be in your presence for this panel discussion that we're about to engage with. And thank you to each of you for being here. So for all panelists to start, can each of you tell the audience a little bit about yourself, your connection to disability advocacy, and also, you know, in your introductions, you know, how has this work of having a disability and also being a leader in this space impacted you throughout your life? So whoever feels compelled to kick us off.
I can start. I'm Kohenet Dr. Harriet Cohen. I use she, her pronouns. I'm a 54-year-old Black overweight woman with natural styled black hair. I'm wearing a black and white patterned dress and glasses, and I'm zooming in from my office at Loyola University, Maryland. And I'm truly honored to be part of this program today. I identify as a person with disabilities. I have a history of ADHD, dyslexia, social anxiety, depression, neurodiversity, deafness in one ear, and physical mobility issues. And I'm also the parent of a child with ADHD, autism, social emotional disabilities as well. That makes me a disabled self-advocate, and I'm also a person who diagnoses disabilities, and then I am able to advocate for my clients to receive the best possible participation in their communities. And all of this makes me even more committed to my part of Tikkun Olam every day. Even though I can't do all of the work, it doesn't mean that I can't do my part. And I feel called, because of my love of Judaism, to overcome my own struggles and to advocate for Jewish people of color and other marginalized groups within the Jewish world.
Wow, what a journey. What a journey. Thank you so much again for being here. Stefan?
Thank you so much. It is such a pleasure to be here on this panel with everyone today and to see members from different parts of the country and around the world. For a little bit of a description, my name is Stefan Clank. My pronouns are he and him. I have blue eyes and pulled back brown hair, as well as a goatee. I'm currently wearing a sport jacket and blue striped shirt, sitting in my home office here in Southern New Jersey, and I have 5 photos in the background, along with a lamp. I'm very happy to be here, and just to tell you a little bit about myself, I was originally diagnosed with PDD-NOS, which is an acronym for Pervasive Development Disorder Not Otherwise Specified, and it is one of a former subtype of autism. I was later re-diagnosed with Asperger's syndrome, which is now part of the autism spectrum, and also diagnosed with idiopathic juvenile osteoporosis, or IJL, which is a rare bone disease. I can tell you that being diagnosed with autism comes with its own unique set of challenges. For me, growing up as a kid, that included sensitivity to being around large crowds, foods, texture, lights, and loud noises. I had many friends in school, and the majority of them were very supportive, but it was very difficult to find another person that shared the same interest as me, or even with a similar diagnosis. But over the years, I have found my voice. I began a job training program at my local JFS in Atlantic County, which not only gave me a significant boost in my confidence, but it also allowed me a golden opportunity to shine as an employee and engage with members of my community. And in 2017, I was very lucky to work as a photographer for an up and coming news magazine, which is now widespread in my community. And that quickly blossomed into new roles, working as a writer, journalist, and participating in social media. Not only that, but I've also gotten involved in advocacy. My mom, who is my biggest supporter, got me into the New Jersey Partners in Policymaking program, which was a huge step for me that acquired the skills for me to speak up for myself and to raise my voice on issues that were so important. And this in turn led me to where I am today as a proud participant in the New Jersey LEND program. And that will allow me to continue my success in the field of advocacy in helping others achieve their fullest potential.
Wow. What a gift. Again, each of you in your own way. Brian, take us home for the introductory remarks.
Hi, my name is Brian. I use he, him pronouns. I am a teacher at Sinai Academy in Brooklyn, as well as a master's student. I actually transferred over to the School of Professional Studies and Disabilities master's, and I'm currently a master's candidate, and I am hopefully going on to my doctorate in public health or medical law. I have not yet made that decision, but we'll soon. I also am working towards advocacy for people with cancer treatment, holistic medicine. I've done cancer research in glioblastoma as well as pancreatic cancer throughout my undergraduate years, and have published throughout within my papers of undergraduate studies through different works about holistic medicine in philosophy and utilitarianism. I have also been working with kids specifically with disabilities, now teaching and aiding and assisting kids with dyslexia, autism, as well as ADHD in my school. And I am wearing glasses. I am Caucasian with a kippah, Ashkenazi Jew, and I'm wearing a black sweater.
Wow, friends, as you just heard from each of our panelists, we are in the presence of justice warriors. We are in the presence of people who have transformed and continue to transform, as the Rabbi shared earlier, the barriers that might exist for us as individuals sometimes, but then also for our communities. And I'm just so moved, really, by each of you and what you have done in your own lives to get to arrive to this moment, and also what you do for so many others. So just really call Kavod as thank you. Thank you. And, you know, Dr. Harriet, I was hoping I could ask you a question. As a clinical psychologist, you know, caring for patients with so many different needs, and also specifically patients who also have a disability, and also as a parent of a child with a disability, are there aspects of living with a disability that you want to be sure that our communities are thinking about and know and try to understand? Please share. Yeah.
Yes, absolutely. And I thank you for this question. First, the true disability is actually our society. We are all different. Hashem has created us that way, and yet our institutions create obstacles that can negatively impact our abilities or the ability of everyone to be included. All of my challenges have spurred me toward action, because if it's a problem for me or a problem for my 18-year-old, then I know it's a problem for others. And I'm committed to supporting Judaism that's inclusive for all, across all of our identity factors. Many disabilities are invisible, and we must allow individuals the capacity to be open up front and upfront about accommodation needs. There should be no shame in creating access for all. It's a responsibility that we have as Jews and as humans. Additionally, because of some of the barriers that we find in our society, systems that are not inclusive can lead to emotional and behavioral and social struggles and increase the likelihood of co-occurring mental health struggles with other disabilities. And so I think that what we need to do is see the spark of divinity in all people and treat them as if we are created by the divine. If we save and respect and empower one person, it is as if we have saved all of humanity, right? And every person has worth and value and dignity, and we need to ensure that there are policies and procedures and guidelines and principles and legislation and resources for all people so that we all can be included under the tent of Judaism.
Amen to that. You know, friends, amen means I agree, I believe, I'm leaning into, and so much of what you just said. And Dr. Harriet, as a Kohenet, I've seen how you exude Torah and spirituality into everything that you do, and just even recognizing, as you shared, about the Torah's mandate and Judaism's mandate as it relates to lifting up those in need and advancing justice and equity for people with disabilities. And on that note, Brian, I was hoping I could also ask you on a similar question around Judaism and the work that you do. How has Judaism impacted your outlook on living with a disability? And how does having a disability affect your faith? And if anyone else wants to jump in on this one, feel free. But Brian, I was hoping I could ask you.
Mm-hmm. So for me, I would definitely say, as a person who is legally blind and who has autism and deals with anxiety on a daily basis, within even Judaism, trying to understand the approaches behind what does it mean for me as a Jew to live with these disabilities. Like, I constantly question myself, like, who am I as a Jewish person? How do I fit into this category? How do I understand how Judaism affects me as an individual? And I would say that I was from a very secular background and became more religious within my own, like, over the years, just became more religious and essentially do it like davening and going for Shabbat and being around more people within Judaism has led me, or within, I should say, within Orthodox Judaism, has led me to where I am today. I mean, I never would have had the opportunity to be working in a yeshiva and to be working with such amazing students that I would never have been able to do as a person within the secular community. I've understood that there, within like reading Torah and davening and studying Gemara and Rashi and all these different things, and understanding also Maimonides' work and also Dr. Fred Rosner's work through bioethics and medical law, specifically medical halachot, approaching these views and ideas of understanding, yes, Judaism and medicine come together like hand in hand. We just don't realize it until we actually see these things for what they are. We see God and understand that we all have a purpose here, and understand that these challenges make us into this amazing entity called a being. And it's just here. It's like, this is us right here, like in this world. And we're all here for a reason, and we're all here to be together and to be with one another and to be tzaddikim, to do that which is to help others, to be that tzaddik, to work with others, to be around others, to teach others. I think is the most appropriate way of putting it, is to teach. Teach others, whether it be from the point of medical law or even just teaching in education or teaching in general.
Wow, such deep Torah. And as you're sharing, Brian, I'm reminded, you know, each of us have our own journeys and connections to our faith, to Judaism, and to think about how complex some of those journeys can be. But then as you were sharing, it made me feel so proud that we have today that Jewish Disability Advocacy Day, but then also the work that we do not just in one day, the work we do all year round, and the containers that exist in Jewish life. The people who brought us together, you know, the Union for Reform Judaism and the Religious Action Center and Jewish federations, and just the work that our communities do to support one another. I hope more and more people could connect the way you were just describing, Brian, or should I call you Rabbi Brian? But on that note, you know, Stefan, you know, thinking about the Jewish community and the different safety nets that exist and how we create spaces that support each other. You know, I understand that you have been a recipient of the community that we are a part of, the communities and services from one of our Jewish family service agencies, the JFS of Atlantic City. And I was just kind of curious, what was your experience with them, and how do you relate to this conversation around the Jewish community and how we support one another, and specifically how the Jewish community supports those who have disabilities? You know, why did you turn to them, and how did they support you?
Well, first of all, the experiences and the support that I received from Jewish Family Service has been nothing short of exceptional. I turned to them during a time when I needed it most. One thing that is important that I hear bring up is that between the ages of 18 and 21, most of the services within the state of New Jersey for individuals with disabilities went away. Because this is considered a transition period between school and adult life. And once I turned 21, many of these services became available to me. And I was given this grand opportunity to participate in a job training program. And this was an opportunity for me to acquire new skills in the workplace, to form interactions, to become involved in possible scenarios in the workplace, and to acquire new interview skills. It became an experience that also introduced me to dozens of amazing people, many of whom that I'm friends with today. And not only that, but this specific program led me to the workforce. I'd work with a job trainer twice a month. We get to meet and talk about what's going on at work, how can things be improved, and it really led me to an incredible service that I wouldn't know where I would be without it. And it just shows the level of inclusion in our community and just how welcoming everyone is and what is being offered. And I think it's so heartwarming to have that service within our own area and just around the country.
Can you even imagine, right? From one thing, how it leads to another thing. And Stefan, it's just such a gift to hear about how our communities have supported you and also how you support our communities. So thank you again. And friends, we appreciate your patience in sticking with us as we come in for a landing for our program. We have just one or two more questions for our panelists. And then we'll hand it off for closing. And, you know, Dr. Harriet, I was hoping we could ask you, you know, a lot of the work that you're doing, in addition to being a psychologist, an ordained Kohenet as a spiritual leader, and the work that you're doing to build a more just and equitable world in Baltimore, but then the project that you also lead, the Jews of Color Mishpacha project, where we're building communities for families. You know, I'm curious, this added identity and the layers, even in your description of how you identify yourself, the compounded layers of identities, the intersections of holding multiple identities. For you as a Jewish person of color who also has a disability, how do these different intersecting identities impact your lived experiences?
Thank you for lifting that up, Rabbi Isaiah. And as you say, as a person of color and a person who supports people of color and Jewish people of color, there are stark differences in the identification and diagnosis of disabilities and then the supports and the outcomes, at least here in the United States. There's a lack of resource and information about disabilities among communities of color, and yet children of color are more likely to receive so-called special education services, and due to the intersection of racism and classism, less access to resources. So these intersecting, I guess, isms, you could call them, often manifest in what we see as the special education to prison pipeline, which is truly an abomination. As a clinician, I have many times seen the same symptoms in kids with varied outcome. Kids who come from families with financial resource and kids who come from families that are white or more likely to receive early intervention for developmental disabilities and learning disabilities. Diagnoses are often developmental, such as autism, and yet with the exact same symptoms, families who do not have financial resource or Black or Latinx families are much more likely to receive conduct disorder diagnoses, and that means less early intervention and less support. And imagine how this impacts Jewish kids of color who are likely to be a minority in their day schools and in their Hebrew school communities. It's my experience as a Black, fat, disabled Jew by choice that there are places where my intersecting identities can be a barrier. And there are also amazing avenues, such as the work that's being done by the Jewish Federation's Jewish Equity, Diversity, and Inclusion Division that can guide us toward ensuring that there is a tent that is so wide and open enough for every Jewish person. And I honor the work that you're doing.
Wow, each of you, I didn't know I was going to get this electric dose of hope. You know, as at the top of the panel discussion, there's so many things, you know, that could be in our way. There's so many barriers that sometimes many of us feel, and those are real. They're real. And as Aaron Kaufman shared before, to lean on each other, to support one another, to help each other be the best self-advocates that we could be, but then also to lean on one another as we need, as a true gift. And so just a big thank you again to each of our panelists and each of you for joining. And I'm so honored and grateful that I now am able to hand the program over to my friend Yolanda Narva-Savage, who is the Associate Vice President of Racial Equity, Diversity, and Inclusion at the Union for Reform Judaism, to take us in for a landing today. Thank you so much.
I feel so honored to be here. Thank you so much, my friend, Rabbi Isaiah Rothstein. Thank you so much to Lily Heyman and the team and partners who put this powerful, incredible time together. This is really truly special. Thank you. So I am Yolanda Savage Narva. I use she, her pronouns, and I am a Black Jewish woman in her late 40s. And I am wearing a yellow sweater and a green jacket. And I'm sitting in my office on the ancestral tribal land of the Pamunkey people in Washington, D.C. And I'm the Assistant Vice President for Racial Equity, Diversity, and Inclusion at the RAC and the URJ. Breaking down barriers to opportunity for people with disability remains core to the reform movement's work of building a world of compassion, justice, and wholeness. And we are proud to be partners in this work with Jewish federations, the network of Jewish human service agencies, and each and every one of you. Jewish tradition teaches us of our obligation to ensure equal access for all people and to help facilitate the full participation of individuals with disabilities in public life. In Leviticus chapter 19, verse 14, we are all commanded that you shall not insult the deaf or place a stumbling block before the blind. Stumbling blocks come in all forms: unequal access or subpar educational and employment opportunities, barriers to healthcare, lack of accessible housing and transportation, and discrimination and exclusion in both Jewish and secular spaces. We look to our elected officials to enact legislation that will break down these barriers and promote full access and inclusion. As previous speakers have shared throughout our program, there are over 61 million individuals with disabilities, and our society is far from accessible and inclusive, especially as COVID ravages on. We cannot stand idly by as people with disabilities are excluded from the community, experience poverty, and face stigma and systemic injustice. These injustices are compounded for disabled people of color. Together, we are powerful. Together, we can make our voices heard. And together, we can make a difference and create a more just and compassionate world. And we have made a difference. For instance, as we mentioned at the beginning of our program, the 117th Congress passed a longtime JDAD priority, the Able Age Adjustment Act. This year, we are off to a strong start. We kicked off the year with a Jewish community organizational letter to the 118th Congress, urging Congress to prioritize policies that promote inclusion and accessibility and enable people with disabilities to lead lives of greater independence and economic stability. Today, we sent that letter to every member of Congress on behalf of all of the partner Jewish organizations. Yet, there is still so much left to be done. For Jewish Disability Advocacy Day, we are asking each and every one of you to contact your member of Congress, either by phone or by mail, using the action alert linked in the chat to urge them to increase federal funding for Medicaid HCBS to ensure that low-income people with disabilities and older adults have timely access to the services and support they need, and to better support the providers and people who care for them. So when you click on the link in the chat, insert your information. You can then choose whether you'd like to send a message or place a call. The system will then automatically generate your member's contact information and talking points or a template. Finally, make your voice heard. This link will also be sent in a follow-up email. So if each of us on this screen contacts our members of Congress with this ask, we can make a real difference, just as we have done in the past. Please don't let your advocacy end here. Advocacy must extend beyond JDAD and beyond Jewish Awareness, Acceptance, and Inclusion Month into your everyday life. And I leave you with this thought, and this is a quote from the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King about bending the arc toward justice. We can't just let it fly in the wind. We have to pull the arc and bend the arc together. And when we do that, real justice is served. I want to thank each and every one of you for being with us today and for being the advocates for justice and equity that you are. Be well. Thank you.